people who have been there, have shown you that it's possible. Then go to them and say, look, how did you do it? If I want to be where you are today, what is it that I must do? But also, don't beat yourself too hard for the mistakes that you have made in life. Learn from them, if you call them mistakes, right? Learn from those. I call them lessons. Learn from those lessons and move on. But when you move on, make sure that you have a circle of people around you who are going to be your support structure. So let me leave you with these words. Who has a watch on their hands? There's a watch, ne? How do we spell watch?
WATCH.
WATCH, right? So W for me is the words that you say. What do you say about yourself? Because whatever that you say about yourself, that's what you will be. If you call yourself stupid, if you call yourself ugly, if you call yourself whatever negative words you say about yourself, that's what the reality will be. Right? So watch your words. Don't ever say anything negative after I. Never say I am stupid. I am ugly. Never utter a negative statement after the word I. Right? You don't need to be affirmed by anyone. You can affirm yourself. You don't have to convince me that you are beautiful. Believe that you are beautiful and you are beautiful. Whether I agree with you or not. Because you would want people to affirm you and they are projecting their own issues on you. They'll come and say how ugly you are, how fat you are. I grew up knowing how fat I am because everybody made it a point to tell me how fat I am, name calling, all the things. And that kills your self esteem because if you allow people to be the ones speaking into your ear, whatever that they say will get stuck in your head, in your mind, and that's what you will believe about yourself. So watch the words that you say about yourself. A is the attitude. What attitude do you have? Do you have the I can do it attitude? Do you believe that no situation is permanent and therefore whatever challenge that I face today, I can overcome it if I have the right tools, if I have the right support? You know, how do you manage your time? That's T, right? I can read it WAT. How do you manage your time? We are all given 24 hours in a day. There's no one who's given 12. We are all given the same amount of time, 24 hours, 7 days a week, whatever weeks, whatever 365 days. So those who maximize the time that they have see results. Those who are like that girl who say 9 o'clock is too early, now I'm still sleeping at that time, the world waits for no one. It's not going to wait for you. If they say interview is 9, you are not there, we call the next candidate. So watch how you manage your time. Invest in the right things in the time you are given because we don't know how long we will be here. So every minute counts, and it's the things you do in those minutes that counts even more, right? Then C, the company you keep. Who are the people in your circle? If you keep company of negative people, you'll see negative results. In my preaching life, I always talk about that whatever that you plant, you will sow. You cannot plant a banana and reap an apple unless somebody did a magic somewhere. So if you keep company of people who are achievers, you'll be inspired to achieve. But if you keep company of naysayers, this world, there's no need to do anything. South Africa is hopeless. You'll live with that. So check the company you keep, right? And H is for humanness. We need to have both because how you treat others is also a planting and a reaping thing. If you treat people kabotu, you will reap both. We need connections. There's no way you'll treat me good today and I don't reward you. Of course, unless I'm an impossible person. But imagine the investment you are making when you invest in kindness, loving people, being appreciative, and all those things, then you will reap. I remember this one time I went to an interview, and the person interviewing me knew my mother. And the reason they knew my mother is because my mom was a nurse, and my mom treated them so nicely, so kind. At the time they were admitted, that he felt, sure, I need to do something, Pella. Your mother. Yeah, yeah, that time. So maybe that time I was not going to get the job. But because the person felt they owed my mother something, I was given an opportunity. So you are not just representing yourself, you represent a generation, either the generation in your past or the generation in your future. So what you do to others, I think we always say treat people as you would want to be treated.
Yes.
Don't be a rude person and expect that you'll find kindness.
Yeah.
So be human, to humility, when you humble yourself, you'll be elevated. Be humbled. Have a humble spirit about you. Even when you are an achiever, don't rub it in people's faces. So those are the words that I just wanted to leave you with. Or each time you look at your watch, just remember, I must not say negative words about myself. I must always have the right attitude. I must manage my time. I must keep the right company. And I must just be a human being who genuinely loves other people and treats them with kindness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Madam CEO, head of the feminist agenda here at Soul City. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone has any questions for our CEO while we have her. You are welcome to ask any questions. She has shared so generously with you guys. I feel like I know you differently now. Right? So if there's any questions, please do ask. If not, we'll move on to our second speaker. I'm sure nervous because of your own presentation. So, okay, it's fine. Hey, yay.
After.
You can, okay, yes. Yeah, afterwards. Good, that's
So
perfect.
do you have a question?
You do have questions.
It's about like the studying abroad.
Studying abroad.
Yeah, like the how the application
and stuff like that. Okay, cool. I think maybe let's do it afterwards when nerves are gone and we are just talking.
I'm not going.
Yes, and we do have Fina for the day. So yes, thank you very much, Fina. I really love that Fina shared so much about her own personal life, as the CEO, and the CEO is the CEO, but hearing her, just like us, you will have an oopsie with the boy here and there. That doesn't mean and it's done with you and you will amount to nothing. And I know that's the stuff that we hear all the time, but I think it's great that we get to see that that's not the case. You can go through things as a young person, make mistakes where you make mistakes, or bad things can happen to you. And then later on, good things happen to you. It's about taking control over your life. One of the values of feminism is autonomy, right? So taking charge of your life and making your own decisions. Okay, sharp here ke baizitse, or here motho o nkentse hampe, but this is what I'm going to do about it moving forward, because this is what my end goal is. So thank you very much, Fina, and thank you for sharing an open mind and listening handle. I'm going to give the floor to our second speaker, Nkeletseng. So she'll introduce herself and tell you all about herself and everything else that she wants to share with you today.
The pressure is getting worse. Before I introduce myself, there's something about Fina said something about keeping certain people in your spaces, right? And we have a different connection, Nalian, and it's very spiritual. And I laughed when she came to sit next to me. I said, "It's funny. I made notes, and almost everything that Fina talked about is in my notes, you know." So the connection was there, you know, because I made a post in the morning, and I said, I got a call to say, come speak, you know, and I had to pray about it, right? Because you're speaking into people's lives, you know, and I had to pray about it to say, what is the intention of the invitation, you know? But the question quickly became, what is it that I need to deliver? It's not about what you want me to say, but what it is that I need to deliver, right? So my name, Kinkeletseng Tsetsane. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a social entrepreneur. I am a mentor. I am Bona. I'm a jack of all trades. Right. And what allows me to execute all these different roles and effectively wear these different hats is the fact that I have mastered the art of staying in my own lane, running my own race at my own pace. Right. And I'm saying this because, as Fina said, all of us have different journeys. Detours are there, detours are different, but at the end of the day, God has a plan for each and every single one of us. And that plan is of prosperity. Whatever prosperity means to you, because it also doesn't, you know, it looks different for all of us. You know, for you, being married with children in a happy home is your kind of prosperity. Being a CEO is the prosperity that you desire, you know. So, which is why I say it is very important for you to run your own race. Skashaba told me, never envy what she has, because how dare we, or what she has had to sacrifice or endure to get or to be where they are, right? So I made 3 very straightforward points or messages that I wanted to share with you. And I know you said it's, you know, my feminist journey, and you know, feminism is a personal journey, right? Because if you had to research feminism, you'll get a whole lot of theories, you know. But essentially, for me, it's about holding space for each other as women, as Black women, right? And it ties in very nicely with what it is that I wanted to say to you. And the first point that I needed to get across to you is that whatever is happening to you is not happening to you alone. You know, Fina shared her story, and my story is very similar to hers, but it changes here and there because I'm matriculated. Like I said, right. Came to Pretoria, did my studies, and straight after matric, I went into a learnership, right? And this speaks to the multiple avenues or opportunities that are available to lead you to your destination in terms of your career. I did a learnership in hospitality management with Protea Hotels. And there I met my forever Yena. Again, gone dating, vision gone, distraction, you know. And at 21, I fell pregnant. And first things first is, before I even fell pregnant, I abandoned my studies to follow the love of my life. He was a soccer player, so he had to go play in Belgium. So I was like, yay! Belgium, you know what I mean? And against my parents' wishes, I did, right? I went to Belgium, and when I got there, I soon realized that, hey, okay, you know, and I needed to come back home. And when I came back home, I was pregnant. And being a PK, you know, exactly, right? Being a PK, the first thing my mother said was like, Your father preaches about these things, so you are marrying that man. And so my marriage, when I got married at the age of 22, was not fully because I was madly in love with this person, right? But it was out of obligation and my need of wanting to correct what I think I had done wrong. Not only for myself, but only to save face for my family. And one of the things, even when the marriage was going wrong, one of the things that kept me in that marriage was the words that my mother said, because I'm a certified daddy's girl. May his soul rest in peace, And because my mom and I had a very turbulent relationship, one of the things she said to me before I got married, she's like, I can finally have my husband to myself. And I never recovered from that. So even when I wanted to leave, I felt like I would now be going. Who was my dad, by the way? The marriage got abusive, like to an extreme. I have been pulled down the stairs. Do you understand? But again, wrong. I mean, he's a soccer player. He's got money. I was driving a Mini Cooper convertible, living in a duplex in Kyalami when I was 22. So having to go back home and leave all that behind came with a lot of pressure until I myself made the decision. And I spoke to my dad and said, if I don't leave, body bag. And that is when it dawned on him that when I married you off, So basically, what Fina was sharing and what I'm sharing is to say, whatever it is that you are going through, there's somebody else in this room probably having experienced something similar, having experienced exactly the same, whether it's depression, whether it's that sexual assault that happened to you, whether it's poverty, whether it's coming from a broken home, because I didn't come from a broken home, but now I had to face the choice of raising my daughter as a single woman in South Africa, leaving a wealthy man. That on its own comes with its own challenges, But I had to find my tribe. I had to find people that held my hand and affirmed me. And what that did, especially my relationship with my mom, led me to my purpose, right? Which is my second point, right? Because the social enterprise that I say I'm running, I have these kind of conversations. We talk prevention, we talk making good decisions with young women and now also young men, And I started because I needed to be the adult that I needed when I was that age. So I used my post-traumatic wisdom, right? Because that's what it became. I had to tap into that, right? To say, what did I not get from the adults that I want these children to have? And that is how I started MBT Lifestyle. Creating safe spaces for young girls just to be, to talk about all the issues. Mama prefers this one over me. But what I wanted to do over and above just the conversation, I actually wanted to help young people to actually improve their relationships with their parents. How do we meet each other halfway? This is where I'm at, an opportunity that I did not get. This is where I'm at, this is where you're at. So how do we meet? How do we find common ground for us to move forward? And that forced me to look for who I wanted to be in the world. I think in most cases, we talk careers, we talk ambitions, and most of the time those are achievements, right? We talk about what we want to achieve or what we want, but we hardly ever talk about who we want to be in the world. Or if all those things were to be stripped away from you, who remains? And that is exactly what helped me when I went through a divorce when I was 25. That I never changed my lifestyle simply because I was married to a soccer player. I continued to Mr. Price because I knew my value was not attached to material. So even when I had left and I had to start from scratch, I told that man, I left everything. We were married in community property, but I said, I need two things from you. I need my child and I need my identity back. That is all I needed to start from scratch. Not the cars were repossessed. Cooper went back to the bank. And I had to start from scratch. Ka thola job, ka ba receptionist, so I would take a taxi, leave at 5 a.m. in the morning from Pretoria to North. But I did that with so much passion. And I knew why I was doing it. And fortunately, I was able to rebuild from all that. Without a qualification, Osfina, I ended up working for one of the biggest medical aid companies doing recruitment. I found myself interviewing people with qualifications bigger than mine. How? I cannot explain to this day. But I did it. Eventually, I found myself on the other side because I eventually headed a learnership program. And I could see that there were a whole lot of young people with great potential. You look at the matric certificate, it's straight A's. But the minute they walked through into the interview room, it was terrible. Then I needed to go to the other side and be a harambe, to say, okay, maybe my job is to help you prepare, to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented. I did that and it failed. So I failed numerous times before I could be where I am right now. And one of the things that I really value about where I am is it never feels like I'm working because I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. So it is the importance of identifying your passion, identifying your purpose, and the money will find you. And it has. I get asked into the rooms to facilitate and talk about things that I'm passionate about, not scripted. Because I remained true to myself. And the last thing, which is very, very important, is always leaving the door open. I am a beneficiary of women that left the door open for me. So I can't claim that I did this by myself. There are women that held my hand and said, get into the room. You might not have a seat on the table, sit on the floor, just don't leave the room. And once you are secured at the table, you leave the door open for others. Because we get caught up in the syndrome. I'm the only one from Soweto in the room. I'm the only Black woman in the room. And you forget that somebody had to walk and work the ground for you to be in the room. And your responsibility is to pay it forward. And in closing, my dream and my prayer for you, all of you, is to really show up in the world as your true self. Because that is the only way you can navigate it. Make those mistakes, but make sure that it's mistakes that you can recover from. Because some mistakes are irreversible. Mistakes, lessons, whatever you call them, they will be there. Nothing is perfect. But ensure that these are mistakes that you can recover from.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our speakers are so great, can I just say? Yes, thank you so much, Nkeletseng, for sharing again so personally. I know Hore, you guys are anxious to just get started so that you can finish. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna start with our first team. And just to rebrief our adjudicators and everyone watching at home, we had asked each of the teams from Sebokeng, Katlehong, and Soweto to prepare to us their findings on the importance of comprehensive sexuality education. This is an issue that Soul City advocates for in our work every single day. And so, in bringing the girls here, it was important for us to also share that with them and ensure that in whatever findings that they or the diggings that they were doing, they're able to find something to take away for themselves and to use in their own lives and in the lives of others around them. So we're going to hear from each of the teams. Ke tlo ya alphabetically. So we look like a K, KSSA. We'll start with K1. They will go first, and then they will just present to us what it is that they found on the importance of comprehensive sexuality education. And you guys have 10 minutes. You can use your 10 minutes however you want. But also remember, no one is here to catch you out. So we will then just also hear from the adjudicators what they can add to what you have presented. And yeah, most importantly, have fun. These are your seats. And then I think your team leader can introduce you, or you can introduce yourselves, whatever works for you.
Good day, everyone. I hope everyone is well. So it's Mother Parliament. The name sounds too serious. Okay. So my name is Marcos Temu. I am an intern here at Soul City under communications. This is Lerato Pahlane. Yes. Lerato Pahlane, Nomcebo Shongwe, and Valentine Shabalala. So we will be presenting on the importance of comprehensive sexuality education in the LGBTQIA community. So yes.
You guys can sit.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
According to the South African Department of Education, which is the DBE, comprehensive sexuality education, the CSE, was introduced in 2000 within the subject of life orientation and life skills. It was introduced to ensure that learners do not get and misleading messages on sex, sexuality, gender, and relationships. So our presentation aims to show how the lack of implementation in the South African SCE has impacted the LGBTIQ plus community negatively. Sorry. We do this with the application of intersectional approach, where we factor the different forms of marginalization, such as race, class, disability, nationality, and sexuality. Firstly, we explain what the SEE is in the South African context and show what is happening regarding it in South Africa. Secondly, we show our angle, which is how the lack of implementation in the South African SCE continues to affect the youth, especially the ones within the LGBTIQ plus community. Then thirdly, our group member is going to share a testimony of how this has impacted her, adding how effective CSE could have helped.
Okay, so a comprehensive sexuality education its core aim is to help learners build an understanding concept, values, attitudes around sexuality, sexual behavior, as well as leading a safe lifestyle. And also, comprehensive sexuality education is not just about reproduction, family planning, and safe sexual behavior. It also includes positive aspects of our sexualities, such as love and relationships. Can continue.
Well, recent studies have shown that only 59% of South Africans have comprehensive knowledge of ways to prevent HIV. This is only the general population. It is not inclusive or exclusive of the LGBTIQ plus community. Also, it is estimated that only 5% of our schools provide CSE, which is very low. Uh, Researchers found that Soweto MSM, those are the men who have sex with men, according to Wikipedia. They identify themselves as straight, bisexual, or gay. And the highest rate of HIV infections is among gay identifying individuals, which is at 33.9%. So, researchers estimated the rate of infection for bisexual MSM in Soweto to be 6.4% and 10% for straight identifying MSM. With the correlation of sexual identity and sexual practice, condom use in same-sex relationships tends to be in the hands of bisexual and straight MSM. So these whole findings demonstrates the pressing need to promote condom use among same-sex relationships, not forgetting sexuality education that teaches safe sexual practices for the LGBTIQ plus community.
I'm going to share my testimonies. Ngikhuluma isiZulu. Okay, ngizolimi. Okay, ngizoqala ngokuthi ey'kolweni sithola othisha kanje ba-discriminate iy'ngane ezama ukuphuma ziy'veze because siyazi sonke ukuthi akukho lula ukuthi umuntu ephume esho ukuthi mina ngithanda umuntu esicishe sifane ubulili obubodwa kanje same gender. So kulo xabana kuleyo nto ekhona leyo sithola ukuthi othisha or ekhaya awukwazi ukuphuma uthi uyaphuma ukuthi maybe ingane kamfundisi kakhulu esikhathini esiningi hlezi kanjalo awukwazi ukuphuma because uma uphuma kuzothiwa imfundiso uyithathe kuphi kuqala because mostly thina emndenini emnyama kunokuthi into esikubona uyiyo into ifunde ekhaya. So ikakhulukazi nje ukuthi singathola ispace esi-right sokuthi sifundise abantu abamnyama ukuthi into kanje asisho ukuthi sifundise iy'ngane ukuthi ilalane zodwa cha sizame ukuthi bakwazi ukuthi uma bephume ngendlela e-right and bathole ukwamukeleka emphakathini ngoba akukho lula ukwamukeleka and ekufikeni ukwamukelekeni udlule ey'ntweni ezinzima kuqala. So
Okay, policies we will implement. Point of color dress code. The guidelines recommend that schools allow learners to dress in whatever uniform matches their gender identity or expression. Unisex bathrooms. Schools can make provision for unisex bathroom if not possible due to budget constraints. Schools are encouraged to allow LGBTQI plus learners to use the toilets and changing room facilities which they feel most comfortable. I go with this point because, example, esikoleni engangifunda kuso, I had a friend bekayigay. So bekangayi toilet at all. Bekangayi toilet because bekathi makaya toilet yabafana bebamthuka because esikoleni kugcwele amaZulu and amaZulu banalento ukuthi hayi yabo like laba khona bayifuna igay and which kuyinto emele ifundiswe ey'koleni because esikhathini samanje siphila nabo. I understand umuntu omdala who doesn't understand into yama-gay nanani but i-youth mina ngabe siyaba-understanda siyakwazi ukuphethana nabo because yinto thina vele esikhula ikhona vele siyayibona iyayenzeke elondeni so bekangakwazi ukuya ema-toilet and angeke angene vele etoilet amantombazane so kumele kube khona indlela yokuthi nabo babe ne-toilet izoba-accommodate bona bafile ba-right mabangena kuleyo toilet leyo and i-uniform because abanye vele ama-gay bafuna vele ukubonakala ukuthi yazi ngigcoka iskate makagcoka iskate but ey'kolweni makafaka iskate bazomkhipha and kumele abothisha bakwazi ukuthi baba-accommodate nabo basey'kolweni yabo.
Thank you. Thanks, K1. I'm going to ask our adjudicators to just engage with our speakers, particularly on their findings and their recommendations as well, which I think were very, very important points that they all raised, and the testimonies of what young LGBTQI plus youth go through without the aid of comprehensive sexuality education. So over to you guys. Yes.
Madam Speaker, me, I have a question. In one of your recommendations, you spoke about having unisex toilets, right? And we know what GBV, rape and sexual assault, looks like in our country. So how are we going to protect our children? Now, when we have boys and girls in one room, in one toilet, we don't know what they're doing there because privacy. So how do you intend to navigate that?
Bangisho kunama-toilet amantombazane nawo abafana kumele babenzele awabo because abakhona ukungena namantombazane because vele ba-abafana ubulili babo ku-abafana so bona kumele babe nama-toilet wabo azokwazi ukuthi nabo bangene kuwo because angeke bangene othetho ngoba umfana ilona yakhe kumele angene ebafaneni but abafana futhi mostly amaZulu like abafana so angeke vele because bam-discriminate so kumele babe nawabo.
Okay.
Are you satisfied?
No, I'll hand over to the other.
I mean, they raised interesting points based on the studies, the stats, and I don't know which year, the source. It would have been great to hear, which year this research was done. Because when you do research, you also want, is it 2013, 2014? Because research evolves, and I think the point that my colleague is raising, we need to get to a point where we see human beings before we see their sexuality, their disability, their whatever, So if we grow up teaching children, even teaching one another that we are first human beings before I am a woman, before I am a lesbian woman, before I am a heterosexual woman, before all those, firstly, I'm a human being. So I need to be respected on the basis of being a human being, right? And I think the issue of toilets is an ongoing debate. But there are instances where we use, in our homes, we don't separate the toilets. We all go to the same toilet. So human behavior is what we need to correct. We need to teach people. That's why I go to where we begin. We begin with saying, I am human. And therefore, I need to respect the next person as a human being. So that when we get to spaces that we share, we don't have those problems. Because it is a reality. Or you have people who don't see human beings. They see toys that they can play with when they see women, and so you don't want to open them to that risk if we have not addressed the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is that we need to go back to the basics. Teach people that before you see anything, see a human being in front of you who needs to be respected. So if I go into a toilet and a male is next door, they should not even be thinking, what can I do because I see a woman next door? Because then you are violating. And we need to correct this behavior of people feeling entitled to other people's bodies and just wanting to take what they want. Consent, teaching people around consent, because the minute you touch me in an inappropriate way, you have violated me, and therefore you must face the consequences. So, and I don't know where the debate is, and maybe it's something as society we need to look at in terms of how far are we with advocating, for toilets to be, is it unisex? Gender neutral, because reality is we need to get to a point where any space is a safe space for anyone, right? But also, because you kept saying Amazulu, Amazulu, we also need to be careful in terms of stereotyping and profiling people, because we also don't want now to create tribalistic opinions, around issues. So I'm sure it's not only Zulus who don't, who are not accepting of people's sexuality. But yes, points taken.
Thank you, Chair. Jade, as someone who is currently employed at the Department of Education and work, as a child protection specialist, what would you say are your, responses or your reaction to what the speakers have said, particularly around the policy recommendations?
A lot was presented. I'm very impressed with how the panels presented their findings, the way that you structured, and introduced the different aspects. I'm really impressed by that. I, however, do want to see a deeper dive into not just identifying the issues, but also creating your own solutions as a panel. So, I mean, looking at the system, for instance, with the education department itself, it's all good and well to list all of the problems we have with, for instance, only 5% of schools or 5% of a population group knowing what comprehensive sexual education is, right? But how do we then curb it in order to so we're providing the problem statement, but we're also providing perhaps a list of how we as youth, or we as the generation that's coming to solve this problem, how are we going to do that? And we do that by we do that in one way by coming together, gathering, and finding out from one another what our own personal experiences are, and then creating ways to solve it. Which I'm very, very happy to see that this is clearly brought in talking points within your own circle, and that's how we push the agenda further. So yeah, I don't know if that's answered your question.
Ma'am, you are a speaker. You speak on what you want to speak on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the speakers. I don't know if there's anything you want to say to round up the points that you've made today, or you said what you said.
I would add, Wuti, it is our responsibilities as people coming from all these different backgrounds to try and educate our children, our learners, and everyone young, so that when they come to spaces where there are a lot of people, they are educated to not try and bully people that are part of their community, and try to accept them and include them so that they don't feel neglected or embarrassed and all of that.
All right. Thank you. Can I just say how proud I am? Come on. Okay. The next team, because we're going alphabetically, will be Sebokeng, led by Mamukete. The floor is yours. Woo.
Greetings to you all. My name is Mamukete Rose Bufeno. I come all the way from Val. I'm 25 years old. I'm a member of FLEC. Yes, I'm so city. course.
Yeah.
So this are my team. We call ourselves Feminine Collectives. The first speaker will be Tabiseng Mokhele, which will be doing our introduction. And then the second speaker is Bongiwe Uyambo. She'll be doing, she'll be sharing a story. And the third speaker is Florence. What's the name? I forgot the name. Yeah, she'll be doing our conclusion. So you can start.
Greetings to all. SED, SEC, which stands for okay. CSC, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, is a sex education introduction method used based on a curriculum that aims to give students knowledge, attention, skills, and values to make their own appropriate and healthy sexual life decisions. Since 2013, the Department of Basic Education has implemented the con- sorry has implemented the contradiction. I'm nervous.
Okay. Okay.
You got this. You got this. Can I start afresh?
Yeah.
I'm nervous. I'm really, really nervous.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And you can say it in your own language if it will make it better.
Now, comprehensive sexual education a is a sex is a sex method. Is a sex education method based on a curriculum that aims to give students the knowledge, attitude, skills, and values to make appropriate and healthy sex choices in their lives. Since 2013, the Department of Basic Education has been implementing comprehensive sexuality education through several co-curricular programs. But but it was introduced in the year 2000 within the subjects life orientation and life skills to ensure that teenagers do not make do not have misleading and confusing messages about sex, sexuality, gender, and relationships, which makes it a part of our South African curriculum for almost 20 years now. Teenage pregnancy is pregnancy of a female adolescent under the age of 20. This includes those who are considered adults legally in their countries. Um, teenage okay. How does teenage pregnancy affect one's life, right? So, due to social discrimination, they might not get the support they need to finish their education, get a job, and resettle in the society. Our society relies on moral ethics
moral beliefs, ethics, and unfortunately, teenage pregnancy is viewed as taboo. At a time where our government our government is opening up um, new and equal career opportunities for women, it's a loss that most of our it's a loss that it's a loss that a teenager who gets pregnant and gives birth to a child might not get a chance to finish their education and become successful. And also, teenage pregnancy leads to contracting sexually transmitted diseases such as human immune virus, human papilloma virus, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Now, research shows that in South Africa is one of the highest rates of teenage pregnancy globally, within nearly 1 in 4 girls falling pregnant before turning 20 years old. And this is a data according to the World Health Organization. The prevalence of teenage pregnancy in South Africa came back into the spotlight during Pregnancy Awareness Week from 10 to 20 from the 10th to the 16th of February. Right? Local evidence that the situation is alarming is the latest adolescent pregnancy data from the Statistics South Africa, Stats SA, which shows that 90,037 girls aged 10 to 19 years gave birth from March 2021 to April 2022 in all 9 provinces. The report further revealed that of the almost 34,000 teenage pregnancies during 2020, 660 of those were girls under the age of 13 years.
Benza ngixelela story about my friend of mine who is Hoshianyelezi. As bandisuka kwi-province yase-Eastern Cape. E-Eastern Cape izinto ezininzi asizifundiswa like for instance xa sifundiswa i-life orientation, like other teachers abathandi uba bamane becacisela deep about information of sexual activities, and mostly abazali abahlala e-Eastern Cape kaninzi like ngabazali abasabhiliva kulaa mithetho yakudala. And njengomntana awukwazi into yoba akho lula into yoba ubuze umzali wakho about sexual activities because zaba ngathi ngumntana ongarespekti. Kambe abanye abazali abafuni like nokubona senihleli nomfana, it seems like you are talking something else. But as a school, sometimes we had groups of nikho umsebenzi wesikolo niwenze together, like in Eastern Cape izinto ezinjalo asikwazi uzenza. A friend of mine became pregnant when we were doing grade 10. And the major effect of getting pregnant of her is that it was lack of information and family information about sexual activities. Abazali esihlala nabo kaninzi abakuxeleli yonke into nge-sexual activities. Bakuxelela nje uba ungalali nomfana uzomitha, abakuxeleli into yoba ungalali nomfana ngoba kutheni, kuza kwenzeka ntoni if zeziphi ii-effects ezizawuvela xa ulele nomfana. Abakuxeleli nento yoba sebenzisa i-condom as ukuzikhusela kwintoni nantoni, and if awufuna usebenzisa i-condom yenza so naso. Izinto ezininzi enjalo asizifumani, so abantwana abaninzi bagcina beba pregnant at the young age because of lack information. Yes.
If I were a policymaker, what would I do to address this issue? I would pledge to intensify the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education in public schools. According to Department of Basic Education, the scriptured lesson plans have been delivered to schools across the country. while the department holds training workshops to acquaint school governing bodies with an updated materials. It is said that educators have ended their comprehensive sexuality education training in full support of the program, and now the need of comprehensive sexuality education in South Africa is greater than ever before, with statistics showing that parents are failing dismissively when it comes to talking about sex to their children. And parents not having this kind of conversation with their children, children are not exposed to these topics. So that is why we need to step up as the government. We will also implement or bring the talk onto school premises, teaching about sex to grade 4 pupils to do away with sex education in schools. And also the implementation of policies remaining unfulfilled owing conflicting policies and socio-cultural values of the diverse stakeholders. Awareness campaign and training may help to promote positive perception among stakeholders about sensitive, comprehensive sexual education topics and the distribution of sexual reproductive health in schools.
All right, thank you. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much to feminine what? The feminine collectives all the way from Sebokeng. Thank you also for just providing the context, right, of the trickling effects from not having, access to comprehensive sexuality education and how that might lead to pregnancy and how being pregnant that affects the trajectory of one's life. My speakers, any feedback, comments, questions from your side?
I'm gonna go first. Thank you so much for presenting. You all did really well. I'm very impressed. Also, the subject matter that was covered here, also it really interests me from a perspective of how systems work together, not just from the Department of Education, but how society and families and peer groups and every other kind of grouping, how they all rely on one another to make things work. And how, if there is positive reinforcement, how it can have a positive effect, not just on your life, but every other collective that comes from there. And so I do have a question, and it's about what policy, right? What policy would you have in place for the educators? Would you rather have like a positive reward system for teachers that are actually providing CSE, or would you rather have like a policy in place where if schools aren't performing, or if like we can see that there isn't enough comprehensive education around just sex in general across the board, right? What would you rather have? Negative consequences, or like punitive consequences for educators who aren't implementing what they should be, despite there actually being like, daily activities set out for all age groups at school? Or would you have a reward system for teachers who are implementing?
All right. Are you guys clear on the question?
I would rather have a reward for teachers who are doing the work that they should do.
And the rest of
I would also consider that it's complex for every teacher. Yes. And giving them a reward, I think, would, because everybody likes rewards, I think it would encourage other teachers to give them that kind of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll take the one around parents and the roles that they play, right? for me, and I always say even this to my children, there's a role that I must play, but there's a role that you must also play. So my role in and what's the English? In and whatever of itself.
In and off.
In and of itself will not cover what you need to do for your part. So we need to, when we talk to parents about what they need to do, also say to girls and boys, also take responsibility, right? So programs are there to help parents because it's not easy for parents. Remember, most parents parent the way they have been parented. And we come from a generation where it was taboo to talk to your children about sex and whatever. And as you rightfully said, comprehensive sexuality education is not about sex. It's not let's teach children how to have sex, but it's to say, among other things, if you are going to have sex, because somebody mentioned we would have loved to hear from our parents that use a condom and whatever, they are not at that level yet. There are programs to help them get there, but the school is an extension of the home when you are in a school environment, and because the school is offering those lessons, through life skills, we need as learners to take that information, maybe also use it to educate our parents. Ne? And I know it's not easy, but create an environment of communication, because we don't talk to our parents. And maybe the parent is too strict, but maybe you have an aunt, you have an older sister, you have someone in the family that you can talk to. Identify that person and go to them, but go to them with information. So get the information from the life skills, from Soul Buddies, from RISE, from whatever program in your school that is giving this information. Go to them and check, how much of that information as a parent they know. You don't have to say, Mom, I'm having sex, but you can say, today we were taught about, condoms. And I found it interesting to hear that, in fact, there are female condoms. So you introduce a topic and you can assess from the response that the parent gives whether they also know that information or it's new to them. But I think we're trying sometimes to force things on our parents without necessarily walking the journey with them. And I speak as a parent, So sometimes we need to walk the journey with our parents, understanding the difficulties they also face. So I'm not making excuses for parents. I'm saying there are programs where we try to, but don't make it hard for the parents. And most of the time, it's easy to point fingers and say, parents are not, parents should, But when we ask you as a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, what have you done for yourself? Because information is out there. Don't just be on internet to look at gossip. Be wise is there. It's giving information. Take that information. If you are not sure, go and inquire at your clinic, go inquire with a teacher, with somebody, and then do the right thing.
Thank you, Chair.
No, I'm covered. Thank you.
Covered. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much to the feminine collective. Again, to the feminine collective from Citizen. Well done. Next, we are going to have our last team from Soweto, led by Arabetsui. You guys are up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arabetswe Mukotla. I'm here with my teammates all the way from Soweto. So I would kindly like them to introduce themselves.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kanyisile Kikana.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pastor Kaji.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masolo Mbod.
Okay, the topic that we're given today is why is CSE important? So I would firstly like to explain what is comprehensive sexuality education. So comprehensive sexuality education is a curriculum-based process of teaching and learning cognitive, emotional, physical, and social aspects of sexuality. It aims to equip children and young people with knowledge, skills, values, attitude, and for them to make appropriate, healthy choices in their sexual lives. CSE in South Africa, South African National Curriculum, is ongoing, but there is a distinct disagreement on whether it benefits or harm learners. So, and there's also a misconception around CSE. People around the society usually think that CSE is being taught how to engage in sex, which is not true. And it also reminds me of an incident that occurs when I was in primary school, in my 7th grade. So there's this life orientation teacher of ours. We were supposed to be doing sex education. So now it was an issue of our parents had to come to school to approve whether we should be taught sex education or not. So at some point, we ended up not being taught about sex education. And now I've realized that learners have the right to have access to quality CSE education. But now I feel like my rights have been violated as much as I did not receive that comprehensive sexuality education. Um, Comprehensive sexuality education covers a wide range of topics such as gender, sexual reproductive health, and HIV, sexual rights, pleasure, diversity, violence, relationship. But in most cases, in public schools, those topics are not fully covered into detail. Some of the factors that makes the topic not to be fully covered, it's because of teachers. Some teachers, they don't have confidence in teaching about sex education, or rather they are uncomfortable. Even in our health sectors, we don't usually receive quality education, or rather information about CSE, because sometimes when you usually go there for prevention, you just have to choose which option you want to do, but you are not given any information on how the contraceptives can affect you, or the side effects. You don't usually get such education about contraceptive, but you are given options. So the importance of CSE is because we will be able to give consent, build confidence and self-esteem. We'll be able to report rape and reduce the rate of teenage pregnancy.
I will be focusing on the concept of gender-based violence and unplanned pregnancy. Gender-based violence refers to any type of harm that is perpetrated against a person or a group of people because of their factual or perceived gender identity or sexual orientation. Gender-based violence is one of the common impacts that lead to unplanned pregnancy through a situation of rape, and it is one of the common situations that we are facing in South Africa. There are different types of gender-based violence, which is verbal, physical, socio-economic, domestic violence, as well as sexual harassment. But now there's an issue here of the convicted people who commit rape, because we don't take that into consideration, and it has affected the society, and they are going through the sociopath results, and we are not aware of those issues, and we need to implement something that will help people that cause rape, and to find out what causes that, because it gives rise to to situations whereby we get a lot of victims and they undergo depression, they undergo traumatic factors for the rest of their lives. Gender-based violence has impacted into unplanned pregnancy to the society because of no rigid mitigating processes. It has also increased the birth rate to a number of 18 births per 1,000 people. The, un, the unplanned of it causes strenuous effect on them and the victims because now they are worried about financially supporting their children, and it becomes intense where they get contaminated with STIs, so it causes abysmal effects on their journey. Some people they decide on committing abortions, and they also think of handing their children to the orphanage centers, which causes an effect and mental disorders. Another cause that leads to South Africa having a high rate in birth rates and fertility rate is teenage pregnancy, which is caused by family systems and peer pressure as well as urbanization. How do we deal with gender-based violence in order to mitigate unwanted crises of pregnancy? By enforcing the law when it comes to imprisoning the convicted, and also implementing systems of making protection orders, as well as increasing the education of um, delivering education in terms of birth control, contraceptive services. To prevent teenage pregnancy, CSE education must be implemented in schools, and it is one of the indispensable solutions in order to make our society a better place. And also, another solution that I've got in mind, I think we should do something that is user friendly to children at school, like applications whereby they can able to interact with and complete quizzes in terms of comprehensive sexuality education. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about causes of gender-based violence. The influence of culture, tradition, and gender-based violence. Global. Men use it as a tool to oppress, exploit, and dominate women. Uktwala female genital mutilation, legal factors, and the role of the police, access to courts, budget constraints, lack of cooperation amongst government departments, socio-economic factors, poverty, alcohol, and substance abuse. And then effects of gender-based violence. They pose danger to women's reproductivity, health, and physical well-being, and psychological health. It gives rise, it gives rise to psychological trauma and stigmatization of victims in some cases. And then women productivity is affected at home, school, and workplace, and in the community. And that can also lead to emotional depression and suicide.
I'm going to talk about statistics on gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is only high in South Africa, with 51% of women reporting that they have experienced gender-based violence, and 76% of men admitting to perpetrating gender-based violence at some point in their lives. In 2019 and 2020, 5,000 53,293 sexual offences were reported, with an average of 146 per day, up from the previous year. In the recent quarter, between April and June 2021, 855 women and 243 children were killed in the country. Addition to what I've just said, as I'm speaking now, there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing gender-based violence, and it's increasing rapidly each and every day. Women are getting killed, children are getting killed. Then recommendation to be implemented on gender-based violence.
by making the curriculum wider range topic taught, invest in teachers training so that the upcoming generation can inherit it and so that they can know how to tackle the situation when they reach it. All I'm gonna say is that to implement gender-based violence, I wish they could be a curriculum at school, more like a school subject whereby they teach children about gender-based violence and sexuality health. Thank you. Adding to implementation of policies is also, if we were in government, would also put enough budget on gender-based violence campaigns and organizations.
Thank you. Yes. Rhea said budget, and that was it for me. Because let's talk about money. Yes, chairs, feedback, comments.
I think I absolutely loved the idea of also looking at the perpetrator, right? Because which is something that is often neglected. One of the things that I do is I work with young men that have been in conflict with the law, using the skills that they get as part of their rehabilitation, to help them use it for economic empowerment so that they don't reoffend, And some of these conversations that we have, number one, you realize some of them offend because they have experienced the violence or they have watched their parents, their mothers experience violence. And secondly, and mind you, please don't get me wrong, we are not making excuses, but we are saying based on lived experience and conversations that we're having. And one of the big things that I picked up was the fact that some of them actually don't even understand the concept of consent.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And it goes back to the behavior issue and the human issue that we need to deal with, right? To say when you speak to them, they are in a facility that is meant to rehabilitate them, but they are not able to get rehabilitated because they still don't see what they did wrong. Kuthi bengijala naye lo muntu savumelana savaya saphuza salala, then the next thing ekuseni uthi mina ngimrephile kanjani. And you need to now start to teach them to say, but you can't consent when you're intoxicated, and consent can be revoked at any point. Even if we agreed, when I get into the room and I feel like I don't want to do it anymore, no is a full sentence, You don't have to give an explanation and. So I think that is a very critical aspect that we also need to start looking at, if it's not being looked at already, to say, how did we get here? And what do we need to fix as a form of prevention?
Thank you for presenting and all of the points that were brought forward. I think these are topics that are extremely important. And I also really appreciate what you said, because it leads me to a point where children, it starts there. It starts with those moments where a child is exposed to certain kinds of behaviors. It brings up the nature-nurture debate on, do we inherit these behaviors or do we see them and then act on them? How do we tell whether or not a perpetrator will perform a certain action or, and so it takes me back to looking at early childhood development and how the trajectory of life then happens. What is happening at the very beginning stages of your life as a child within the education system and a child that has to continue within the education system, how it starts and how it ends or how it continues really has such a great impact on one's life. There's an interesting stat that I read about a couple of years ago. It says, well, not a stat, it was a late friend of mine's research. You are more likely as a perpetrator to be or you are more likely to go to the moon in a spaceship than to be persecuted or convicted of a rape charge in South Africa. So it's there's no system of real justice, but it's not just about the justice aspect. It's about so much more before that.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what this group has presented to say, what happens beforehand? You know, how are we being proactive enough? Because our law enforcement shouldn't have to be this extreme. So yeah, what are we doing? And what will you continue to do as the youth?
Yes. Thank you so much, Chairs. And thank you to the Soweto team for presenting. I think what stood out for me is what Ria shared about her own experience in school when parents were given the opportunity to vote on whether or not children should be provided comprehensive sexuality education. And it was parents who opted out of it. And now she's looking back like, she was robbed and something was stolen from her, because had she known some of the things that her parents didn't want her to know, she would have made different choices about her life. And I know that that is something that I had also said in the morning in our briefing session, that as a queer woman looking back, I feel robbed of my life because there are certain exchanges that I've had with men out of feeling like, what else can I do? You know, no one is telling me that it's okay not to like boys and it's okay to like girls, but we're having to behave in a way that is kind of programmed. Everyone is just told to go this way, and there's no room for any deviation, or also deviating in a way that is informed and healthy, you know. So thank you guys so much for your presentation. So firstly, I'd like to thank our CEO for making this possible and for allowing us to bother her with our time every single year. I think it says a lot about the people who are in leadership in this space and what they value and the world that we are trying to create, right? That it's not just what we are saying out there, but we are walking the walk. And so thank you also to our guests for walking with us and for allowing us to, guys, just because you are young doesn't mean you don't have things to do, you know, and we don't take for granted that there are things at home that you could be doing right now, but instead you decided to spend your time here with us. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you also for putting yourself into the task and really allowing this activity to show you something, you know. Thank you also to our speakers. Thank you, Adela from Harambe, for providing, you know, some insights on the world of work and how to navigate it. That was really important, because we also want to walk away from this session whatever, okay, now I can go on the SA Youth platform and get a, you know what I mean, and try and find work. Or this is where I can go if I want tips on how to conduct myself for an interview and so forth, which is important. We wanted you guys to go home with something that you can also share with others that couldn't be here today. Thank you, Nkeletseng, for always showing up for the girls. Thank you so much. It was a last minute request, but the way that you were, like, your preparedness to show up for me, like, was, I'm touched because I was freaking out in the moment when I asked Fina to reach out to you, and I didn't expect that you would so willingly drop whatever you had going on to show up for us and to show up for these girls. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, Jade, for representing the system. Thank you. It's nice also to always have, you know, department people in the room to see who there are people in there who do want to do the work. There are people in there who are invested, you know, in young people's futures and like planting, you know, the seed. So thank you for showing up for this and helping us adjudicate this process. And finally, thank you to the team leaders, Makhosemvelo, Reabetu, and Mamukete. I'm so proud of you for the leadership skills that you have portrayed. Honestly, truly, again, Nkeletseng le Fina, it means the work that is happening at FLEC is doing the things. So shout out to the FLEC team. and everyone who was involved in shaping these young leaders, the way that they were able to mobilize their community members to bring them here, the way that they were able to, support them in their research and help them with their presentation. I think it is something to be admired, and I'm so excited to see how you guys, continue to grow as leaders. Thank you, Akona, of course, always. And thanks to my manager for always allowing me to go crazy with the ideas. And thanks to you at home for watching and always supporting and working on this journey with Soul City. You guys always support us. You're always about the work, and we appreciate you engaging with us and going on this journey of learning and unlearning and advancing the feminist agenda together. Thank you. Bye-bye.